What's going on, everybody? VitalSyntax here, and the non-disclosure agreement for the War Z has finally been released, so I can now upload videos and talk about this on my YouTube channel, so you guys can expect a couple of videos over the next couple weeks on this game. So I've been playing the War Z ever since it was first released on the 15th of October when it was first brought into the alpha state, and I've been playing it for the past couple weeks quite extensively. I've explored the entire map, used almost all the weapons in the game, used all the different items, had everything from player interactions to zombie interactions. I've played by myself, played with groups, and as a whole I've had a lot of experience with this game. I also have a lot of experience with DayZ. So I wanted to bring you guys a review of the alpha. Now this isn't necessarily a first impression review, I'm going to be going more in depth than that, but also keep in mind this is a review of the alpha state of the game. I can't review the full game until it's fully released, and I probably will do another review once that has been released. So just keep in mind that a lot will change from when I am discussing this in this video and when the game is fully released. And of proof of that, just look at how many patches they have released for the alpha. That's one of the things that they've done an incredibly good job, is actually releasing updates for this alpha and for the beta. Over the past couple weeks, they've been releasing updates almost every day or every other day. So extremely good job on that, guys, for doing patches and changes to the game. So let's go ahead and jump into the review and talk about a couple of different categories. So I'm going to talk about the graphics of the game, the sound effects, and the audio track, the gameplay, and just an overall type of summary. So let's first talk about the graphics. The biggest problem I have with the graphics in this game are the textures. There are some extremely low textures. For example, trees, grass, and distant terrain are utterly horrible, even on the highest texture setting. Hopefully those are placeholders and they will be updated for the final game, but if not, then that is a very big issue with the graphics, is the extremely low textures. Extremely, like the lowest textures I've ever seen in some areas. Now there's obviously good textures in a lot of areas, but there are some very low textures in some other areas. The view distance is pretty high. That's definitely a plus. There's lots of vegetation, lots of trees, lots of bushes, lots of grass. There's pretty good lighting and post-processing effects, things like the sun glare, depth of field when you're sprinting, things like glare, the reflection on the water. So definitely a good job with post-processing effects and lighting and stuff like that. The skybox is static, which is, I think, a downside, definitely a downside. For example, during the night, if you look up at the sky, it never changes. It's static. It stays in one spot. The moon doesn't move around. The stars don't even twinkle. Sounds funny to say, but that's one of the things I really liked about DayZ, is that it's all a dynamic weather system and also a dynamic day and night cycle. Hopefully that's something they can improve for the War Z for the final release. Pretty good in performance. I'm running this on a dual SLI GTX 570 setup. Keep in mind that SLI is not enabled, at least right now by default. There is a modification you can do to your graphics card. Just look up on Google War Z SLI and you can find out how to do it. But it has pretty good performance. I usually get over 60 FPS. Although there is a 60 FPS lock for some reason. I can't get it to run over that. Hopefully that's something they can change for people like me that have 120 Hz or higher monitors. And then the last thing I want to talk about, which is something that they have talked about and they've actually been changing, it's not completely fixed yet, is the animations. There are a lot of placeholder animations, and there's a lot of missing animations, and there's also a lot of very clunky animations. And the animations and the textures are the two biggest problems with the graphics, and they're also two things that I think they can fix pretty easily. So overall, I'm going to give the graphics of this game a 7 out of 10 as they sit right now, and that's pretty that's going pretty easy on. I probably should give it a 6 out of 10, but I'm going to say 7. But anyway, let's move on to the sounds, the sound effects, the music track, things like that. So there still are a lot of placeholders for sound effects. Once again, those are things that they're going to be changing. So the gun sound effects are pretty powerful. They echo. They have a nice ring to them. Some of them more than others. But overall, I think the gun sounds are actually pretty good. The footsteps need a little bit of work. For example, when you crouch, you still have just the same volume as if you're walking around or sprinting around. And also, elevation does not affect the audibility of your footsteps. For example, if I am 50 feet away from you, you probably can't hear my footsteps. If I'm 10 feet away from you, you probably can. If I am 50 feet above you, you can still hear my footsteps. So the elevation, for some reason, is still kind of glitched with hearing people's footsteps. So hopefully that's something they can fix. Because, I mean, you can hear somebody coming up behind you, like, 5 floors behind or below you. So that's kind of ridiculous. The zombie sounds are actually pretty well done. They're very scary, very freaky. You can tell the difference when a zombie's chasing you and it's kind of just sitting there. Although sometimes the zombie sound effects actually just cut out instantly, but they're still chasing you, so that's kind of weird. Hopefully they can fix that. They did a really good job with the ambient type of voice sounds and just like crickets and spooky type of sounds that go on in the background when you're just out and exploring in the wilderness or whatnot. So I think they did a pretty good job with that. And then another thing to note is that the main menu music, I think, needs a little bit of work. It's kind of cheesy right now, but we'll see if they can fix that. So overall, the sound effects are pretty good. There are some placeholders and things like that, but I think they did a pretty good job with things like sound effects and zombies and stuff. It's still a little clunky, but once again, I'm going to give the sound effects a 7 out of 10. All right, let's move on to the gameplay, the most important component, in my opinion. All right, so right now there is no co-op support, and I don't mean like co-op actual like missions, but I mean like working together. You can work together, but there's no tools in place to help you do that. For example, there's no way to heal people. There's no way to give people items. There's no trading system. I mean, you can drop bandages for somebody and they can heal themselves, or you can drop, a bottle of water and they can drink themselves. But I think it would be nice if you could bandage somebody else. If somebody had a broken leg, you could fix that broken leg. Things like that. All right, moving on to the next thing, we've got value of life. This is a huge component that they did perfectly well. Basically, in this game, and just like in DayZ, you really don't want to die, because when you die, you're dead. You have to start over, essentially. You might spawn in a nearby area, but you lose all your items, and that's the most important part, is all your loot getting taken away from you. So that's one of the key components that make this game so awesome, that make this genre in general so awesome. Loot variety is pretty good. There's lots of different weapons, lots of different types of, medical supplies, lots of different types of food and things like that, so they did a really good job on that. There is a big issue. I don't know if they've patched this yet. I haven't tested it too much, but there were static spawn points that me and a couple of my friends found. So essentially those were spawn points where an item, the exact same item, would spawn every time. For example, you could find a sniper rifle at this one location every single time. Every hour it would respawn, and that was definitely something that we don't want to see in the game, because you can just farm the crap out of that stuff. But hopefully they will change that if they haven't already. Something I would like to see them add, I think they've talked about this in the forums, is health modifiers. So things like bleeding, shock, broken legs, being infected, things like that. So like I said earlier, if you broke your leg, maybe you have to have a buddy come and like heal it, or do some type of surgery or something on you. And also things like bleeding. Right now, if you take damage, you just take damage, and you can use a bandage and heal yourself. There's no like bleeding a thing like you have in DayZ, where you have that like urgency of I need to get away, get safe so I can manage myself before I bleed out. I really like that component of DayZ and Arma. Let's see. Gunplay is pretty decent. It's not perfect. It's not very realistic, and especially in comparison to DayZ, which is the game that obviously this is kind of competing against. It has none of that realism factor that DayZ has, but it does have things like bullet drop. It does have things like travel time. I think there's a pretty good balance between sniper rifles are the best at range, shotguns are the best at close range, assault rifles are kind of good all around, pistols are very weak at range. They're weak all around. I mean, they're small caliber weapons. So overall, I think the gunplay was pretty good. The movement is very clunky. That's one of the biggest things about the gameplay, is the movement system is very clunky, especially with the animations, and you move extremely slowly. Now, they have talked about a skill tree that's not in the game yet. Hopefully that will be added very soon, and I'm hoping there will be some skills that you can increase your stamina, allowing you to sprint for longer, maybe even just increase your overall movement speed, because right now it's very, very slow movement. The menus do need some work. Most of the items, all the items and all of the menus are basically server side, so whenever you move something from your backpack to your inventory, it can take a while. Like sometimes I've had it take like 30 seconds, which can be really frustrating when you're moving a lot of items. You spend like 10 minutes just moving items between your characters. The AI for the zombies honestly is pretty bad. They have tweaked it a little bit and they fixed it a little bit, but it's still pretty bad. For example, you can just jump on top of a car or a fence, anything that's elevated, and they'll stop following you. They'll completely lose interest, and you can either walk away or you can just hit them from a range with your gun or your bat or whatever like that. And on top of that, they have pretty poor tracking. Like I could jump over a fence and they would just lose interest in me. They can't jump over the fences. I guess that's fine. Maybe they should add some type of vaulting mechanic. But if you are ever being chased by a zombie, just jump over a fence and he'll just lose interest. So there are some issues with the zombie AI, especially with tracking and following you around. And then also, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the melee system. There's a lot of melee weapons in this game. You have everything from bats, spike bats, hammers, hatchets, pickaxes, and I really like that combat system, except the combat system is really kind of stale right now, especially player versus zombie. The zombie basically stands there and tries to hit you. He doesn't really do anything if you circle him, and you just keep hitting him in the head, and a couple of times he's dead, and that's really it. I'd like to see an implementation of some type of blocking system. Maybe you could like block an attack from a zombie and you could time it correctly. Maybe some type of dodging thing that just makes the combat, especially with the melee system, more interesting, because right now it's really stale and really bland. You kind of just stand there and the zombie stands there and you just hit him in the head and he can't really do anything about it because he keeps getting hit and he flinches. He can't hit you while he's being hit. So that's something that needs a lot of work. Overall, I'm going to give the gameplay a 7 out of 10. So anyway, as you can probably guess, I'm going to give this overall game a 7 out of 10. Now keep in mind, this is the alpha. If they fix a lot of these things, you know, that review score would go up, because a lot of the negative things are things that can be patched and hopefully will be patched for the full game. But anyway, that is my review of the WarZ alpha. I know it's kind of weird to do a review of an alpha, and in some cases just not a good idea, but I thought it was kind of helpful because the alpha is actually something you can buy. If it wasn't something you could buy, I probably wouldn't do sort of a review on it, because you know you're not really you can try it out for yourself. You're not really contemplating should I buy it or not. But with a game that you actually have to pay for an alpha or a beta, I think it's good to have reviews out there. So anyway, if you enjoyed the video, feel free to give me a like or a favorite, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.